Bible?
Well, believe it or not, this text that a lot of people see as a source of conflict and a book entirely about conflict and wars and so on actually has information hidden within it that can be potentially an antidote to what we're talking about here. But tell me, what's this love of self thing?
Oh, that's the fuel.
How so?
Well, let me explain. So love for ourselves is intending benefit only to ourselves and not to other people unless it somehow serves our own interests. So if we're thinking and doing stuff in our lives and we don't factor in at all the needs and considerations of other people, and by extension the common good, and by extension from that the Lord, who is the desire to help everyone, that's when we're living a life of self-love. We're thinking only about ourselves and the people that we see as somehow being in our circle. So everything that we're doing is really for us and for our own people. If we do anything for the greater good, it's just so that we look cool, as everyone thinks that we're a good person. We already know this mindset from the movies. It's a classic movie formula. Somebody's living a self-centered life and they're kind of a jerk, but then some whimsical events happen that snap them out of it, and then what's the feel-good ending? It's that they start to care about other people, and they start to think about their impact on other people, and they realize how much better of a life that is. As we mentioned before, it's interesting that love of self doesn't just mean us. Because you can be full of love of self, but you're still very affectionate toward, let's say, your own family. But in this case, love of self loves other people because it sees itself in them. You love your people because you see them as part of yourself. It's not just genetic. We might consider someone one of our people just because they like us, or they praise us, or they agree with us. So it's not just physical similarities. It can be mental similarities or similarities of opinion that make us feel like someone is ours. It's important to know that this attitude is to some extent naturally built into all of us, but it's crucial for the sake of genuine love that this self-love is subservient to higher loves and truths, and not the one running the show and always having the last word. Ultimately, with the love of self ruling, while there may be little highs, it's all temporary and anxious and eventually cycles back into misery. For what it's worth, the love of self is the main love in hell, and it's what makes hell hell.
Oh, I get what you meant by the love of self being the fuel now. So maybe this is a good moment for me to talk about how the Bible ties in, because the Bible tells us something about our history as a human race. It's encoded in the language of correspondences. But if you look back in Genesis, there are a few stories that tell us how division started to occur. The first of these stories goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, and it shows us a time in the human race where we started separating external things from internal things. Eve means our sense of autonomy, that we have our own life, that we're not really dependent on God. And Adam is the rationality that goes with that. And the serpent who entices Eve to eat the forbidden fruit, and she persuades her husband to eat it, means that perspective from the point of view of our senses, where we feel separate from God and separate from other people, and so on. Once this perspective came in, it was a separation of external things from internal things. We no longer think internal things are that important. We're very focused on external things. And so we're not looking at motives anymore. We're looking at external things. And this is something that causes a lot of divisiveness in the human race, even to the point where Adam and Eve in the story are driven out of the Garden of Eden, which is being led away from the point of view where we're even listening to that voice of God anymore, because we've become so focused on external things. Another division that Swedenborg said is hidden in the Bible stories is between beliefs and love. The way it's supposed to work is that love is supposed to be primary, and beliefs are simply supposed to point us in the direction of love. And we see this in the story of Cain and Abel in the Old Testament. They're brothers. They're supposed to love each other. And yet Cain becomes jealous and he kills Abel. And this is a picture of Cain, meaning our belief system, our thought structure, killing loving kindness, which is Abel. Over time, we think, well, my idea is better than your idea, and so on. It's become separated from love. This even cuts us off from heaven, because in heaven it's crystal clear that love is the most important thing, and that beliefs are only there to serve it. So Cain and Abel is a picture of another division that happened in the human race that's led to all this divisiveness that we've been experiencing for thousands of years. And the third one is separating what is temporal from what is eternal. This is a common human affliction. What's really most important is what is eternal. Swedenborg says that the Lord, his divine providence, is paying total attention to what is eternal and only seeing what is temporal in that context, because what's eternal is real. And even something that lasts for hundreds of thousands of years in this world is relatively unreal because it comes to an end. So you imagine the situation in a family where you have a falling out and people don't talk to each other, but then all of a sudden someone's on their deathbed and you realize, oh, we've been fools. We don't even remember what we were fighting about, because the love is eternal. That particular circumstance was something temporal. Human beings have a tendency to separate those things, and this causes another kind of divisiveness. So we come by this honestly, friends. We've been working at this for thousands of years to get into this situation. But it's not impossible for us to overcome it. There actually are ways in which we can reconnect with the mindset and the attitude of heaven and bring that heaven once more down to this earth.